It happened in front of everyone. The laughter, the shimmer of champagne glasses, the glow of chandeliers, all of it paused for a second after she said it. "Ugly hog!" my daughter-in-law blurted, her voice sharp and high-pitched with fake laughter. "Oh, come on, Mom, it's a joke." "Don't make that face, a joke." That's what she called it. But everyone around that long white linen table knew it wasn't. Her friends, perfectly polished women in sequin dresses, were laughing because they thought that's what was expected. And my son, poor Daniel, sat frozen beside her, eyes darting between us like a man caught in the middle of a fire he didn't dare put out. I smiled. That's what I always did. I smiled, because what else could I do? I was 78, sitting in a room full of people who thought I was a prop, something to decorate the background of their expensive celebrations. But I remember every word she said before that moment. It wasn't just about me being ugly or old. No, it was what came after, whispered to her friend, as if I couldn't hear. "She's lucky we even invited her. The last thing we need is her sitting in the front, ruining all the pictures. This party is about elegance, not pity." That word, pity, stung worse than any insult. I sat there quietly, my hands folded in my lap, looking at the glittering birthday cake they were about to bring out for her. I had been the one to arrange the chef, the one who made the booking for this luxury restaurant weeks in advance, under my business account. And the irony was, she didn't know it yet, because this place, this entire venue she called her dream restaurant, was in my name. I had bought the property years ago, after my husband passed away. Back then, it had been an old, struggling steakhouse, half abandoned and losing money. I bought it to help an old friend who couldn't afford to keep it open. After some renovations, I leased it to a restaurant chain. The name changed, the decor changed, but the deed remained under mine, Margaret Turner. It wasn't something I bragged about. I never told my family, not because I wanted to hide it, but because I had learned how people change when they know you have something valuable. Especially my daughter-in-law, Vanessa. Vanessa had always been the type who could turn sweetness into poison without blinking. When she first married my son, she was all smiles and charm, baking cookies, sending me photos of their new house, calling me Mom. That lasted about a year. Then she decided I was old-fashioned. My clothes, my home, even my quiet little garden didn't fit her perfect social image. It started small, canceling my invitations to family dinners, by accident. Then it became more open, mocking my reading glasses, laughing when I misheard her in noisy rooms. And every time I tried to ignore it, she got bolder. But that night, during her 42nd birthday celebration, she went too far. "Come on, Grandma," she said again. Standing at the head of the table, glass of champagne in hand, posing for photos. Her diamond earrings glimmered under the light. "Smile, you don't want to look grumpy in the background. Let's show everyone what a happy family we are." Her friends giggled, their glossy lips stretching into fake smiles. I held mine. The kind you wear when you've learned that dignity often means silence. Then, as the photographer adjusted his camera, she leaned toward me and whispered, just loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, "Don't sit too close, okay? You'll ruin the aesthetic." It was the way she said it, slow, deliberate, cruel, that cut through the air. I looked at her, her flawless makeup, her manicured hands clutching that glass. And in that moment, I didn't feel small. I felt aware that people like Vanessa mistake kindness for weakness. And I had been kind for far too long. The dinner dragged on. The waiters served perfectly seared salmon, the kind Vanessa had bragged about ordering specially for her elite crowd. I ate quietly while they gossiped about vacation homes, handbags, and social media followers. Vanessa laughed the loudest, basking in the admiration of her circle. But there was something she didn't know, that every drink poured, every meal served, every song played that night was being billed under my company. The catering manager had emailed me the receipt just that morning, and yet she mocked me in the very place I owned. I noticed Daniel's silence. My son had grown weary over the years, trapped between loyalty and shame. He loved his wife, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes every time she opened her mouth around me. When the cake arrived, an extravagant 3-tiered tower of cream and gold, I joined the polite applause. She stood proudly in front of it, her friends cheering, phones flashing. Then she turned to me, eyes gleaming with something sharp. "Mom," she said sweetly, "why don't you come stand next to me for the picture?" "Oh wait, actually no. You know what? Maybe just stay seated. It's fine." The crowd chuckled awkwardly. I felt the familiar warmth of humiliation rise in my chest, but I kept my composure, because I knew something she didn't. As she blew out her candles, I leaned back in my chair, my hand resting lightly on the purse beside me. Inside it was a folded letter, the renewal notice for the restaurant's lease agreement. The one with my name printed across the top in bold, property owner, Margaret Turner. I thought of pulling it out right there, laying it gently on the table. Watching her perfect smile fade as she realized the ugly old hog she mocked was the very reason her glamorous evening existed. But no, that would have been too easy. I wanted the truth to sink in slowly, like the tide swallowing a castle made of sand. After dinner, as people mingled and danced to soft jazz music, I walked to the back terrace overlooking the city lights. The night was beautiful. The air smelled faintly of roses and vanilla from the candles burning on every table. Daniel came up behind me. "Mom," he said quietly, "I'm sorry for what she said. You know how Vanessa can be." "I do," I said softly. "And I know how you can be too, Daniel." He looked down, ashamed. "She doesn't mean it." "She does," I interrupted gently. "And you know that." He didn't respond. Just stared at the city, shoulders heavy. "You married her," I said, my voice calm. "So you live with the choices she makes. But I'll tell you something, son. People who humiliate others in public always end up humiliating themselves." The next morning, I woke up early. Before the sun rose, I sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee while the letter from the restaurant lay open before me. I called the restaurant manager. "Good morning, Mrs. Turner," he greeted warmly. "Everything went well last night. Would you like us to charge the event to your business account, same as before?" "Yes," I said. "And please send a copy of the receipt to the person who booked it. I believe her name is Vanessa Turner. Let's make sure she knows who owns the venue." There was a pause. "Yes, ma'am," he said, understanding perfectly. I hung up, leaned back, and smiled faintly. This wasn't about revenge in the cruel sense. It was about balance, about reminding her, and everyone like her, that respect doesn't fade with age. And later that week, when Vanessa opened her email and saw the lease agreement attached to her event invoice, she'd finally understand whose old hands paid for her birthday. As I folded the letter back into my purse, I looked out the window and whispered to myself, "Let them laugh while they can, because the next time she saw me, she wouldn't be laughing." And that, my dear audience, was only the beginning. I didn't expect her to call so soon. It was less than 48 hours after that dinner when my phone buzzed, flashing Vanessa's name on the screen. I almost didn't answer. I was sitting by the window with my tea, watching the snow dust over the street, when curiosity got the better of me. "Hello?" I said calmly. "Margaret," she said, her voice tight and falsely sweet. "I just got an email from the restaurant about my party invoice." "And it had your name on it, did it?" I said, pretending to sound mildly surprised. "They must have copied me because the property is still under my ownership." The silence on the line was delicious. I could practically hear her pride cracking. "Wait, what do you mean your ownership?" she asked, her tone higher now, clipped and defensive. "I mean," I said simply, "that I own the building. The restaurant leases it from me." She let out a small laugh, fake, nervous, the kind that slips when someone feels the ground moving under their feet. "You're joking, right?" "I rarely joke, Vanessa," I said, sipping my tea. "Especially about property." The conversation shifted fast. Her voice softened, her tone almost syrupy. "Oh my God, I had no idea. Why didn't you ever tell us? You could have gotten a discount or something." That was her first thought, a discount. Not gratitude, not shame, not even an apology. I smiled quietly to myself. "It never came up," I said. "And besides, I rather liked watching you enjoy yourself in a place you didn't realize belonged to me." There was another pause, heavier this time. She didn't know what to say. "Well, I guess that's kind of funny," she muttered weakly. "Yes," I said, "it is. Funny how life works, isn't it?" That call lasted just under 2 minutes, but it left a deep mark. one that rippled through the family faster than I could imagine. By the weekend, Daniel showed up at my house, rubbing the back of his neck like a nervous schoolboy. "Mom," he said, standing in the doorway, "you really didn't tell her about the property?" I looked up from my knitting. "Why would I?" he sighed. "She's embarrassed. You know how she gets when people find things out. Her friends were talking, and now she's saying she never would have booked the place if she'd known it was yours." "Oh, I'm sure she wouldn't have," I said, my tone dry. "Would have been quite a tragedy for her Instagram feed." "Mom," he gave me a helpless look. I folded my hands in my lap. "Daniel, I'm too old to be someone's embarrassment. I raised you better than to let your wife humiliate me in public. That was her choice. Now she can live with what comes next." Over the next few days, I started getting texts, messages from her friends. Most of them had been at that party, the same ones who laughed when Vanessa called me names. Suddenly, they were all curious. "Wait, you own that restaurant?" "Vanessa didn't know?" "That's wild. You're such a queen, Ms. Turner." It amused me more than I cared to admit. I wasn't one for gossip, but the poetic symmetry of it all felt earned. And as for Vanessa, she went quiet on social media for the first time in years. No filtered selfies, no motivational quotes about family love. Just silence. One afternoon, I went into the city to meet the restaurant manager to discuss renewing the lease. As I stepped into the dining area, heads turned. Some of the staff had been there that night. They smiled politely now, differently. "With respect, Mrs. Turner," the manager said warmly, shaking my hand. "Always a pleasure. I take it everything went well during the party?" "Quite well," I said with a faint smile. "I think the birthday girl learned something important that night." He chuckled, not asking further. "We'd love to continue leasing. The property has been good to us." "As it should," I replied. "It's home to more lessons than one might realize." As I left, I passed by a table of young women chatting. "I swear that was her," one whispered. "The one who owns the place. The woman Vanessa insulted." "Really? No way." "She looked so classy." I didn't turn around, just smiled as I walked out into the cold February air. A week later, Vanessa called again. This time her tone was trembling, sincere almost. "Margaret, can we talk?" "Of course," I said. "Come by the house." She arrived an hour later, wearing all black as though attending a funeral. Her nails were bare for once, her hair tied back simply. I poured her tea and watched her struggle to find words. I wanted to apologize," she said finally, her voice cracking a little, "for what I said at the party. It was cruel. I don't know what came over me. I was stressed, and you know how I get when I'm nervous." I looked her in the eyes. "Vanessa, you weren't nervous. You were cruel because you enjoy power. You thought mocking me made you look younger, smarter, more important. But the truth is, it made you smaller." She blinked, caught off guard by my calm tone. "I didn't mean for it to sound that way," she whispered. I placed my teacup down. "Then why did you laugh?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I don't know, I guess—" I was showing off. "Yes," I said softly. "And now, you've learned that some people are not as powerless as they seem." She looked down, shame pulling at her face. For the first time, she looked human. Not perfect, not posed, just real. "I want to make it right," she said. "I'll tell everyone I'm sorry. I already deleted the pictures from that night." I nodded. "That's a start, but—" She hesitated. "Can you not tell anyone else about, you know, the ownership thing? I feel like everyone's laughing at me." "Oh, Vanessa," I said kindly, "you don't need my help for that. People laugh at those who give them reason to." She didn't stay long. When she left, Daniel came by later to check in. "She said you were gracious," he told me. "She said you forgave her." "I did," I said truthfully. "But forgiveness isn't forgetting." He sighed. "She's embarrassed enough as it is." "She'll live," I said. "And maybe she'll finally learn the value of humility." That night, I sat by my window again, watching snow drift softly under the streetlights. I thought about how long I'd let people like Vanessa define me, reduce me to my age, my wrinkles, my quiet ways. But not anymore. Respect isn't demanded. It's earned through strength that doesn't shout. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge is not revenge at all. It's dignity. Still, a part of me knew this story wasn't quite finished. Because people like Vanessa rarely learn fully after one lesson. Pride has a way of rebuilding itself, and I had a feeling her next mistake would be even bigger. Pride is a strange thing. When it's wounded, it doesn't vanish, it hides. It waits for a moment to rise again, wrapped in a new disguise. I'd lived long enough to know that apology and humility don't always come from the same place. So when Vanessa came to my house with tears and trembling words, I accepted her apology because I believed in grace. But deep down, I knew her voice still had a ring of performance in it, the kind of tone you hear when someone's rehearsing empathy instead of feeling it. And I was right. It started small. A week after her apology, she began sending texts again, pleasant ones this time. "Hi, Mom. I was thinking maybe we could have lunch at that restaurant again. I'd love to talk about business ideas with you. You've always had such a good head for investments. Maybe you could help me understand property stuff." She even sent photos of new event setups she'd helped coordinate for friends. I smiled at each message, but answered slowly, measured. Because I knew that tone. I'd heard it from people decades younger than me, wearing the same perfume of flattery to cover the stench of intention. She wasn't trying to reconnect. She was probing. Daniel noticed it too. "Mom," he said one Sunday afternoon, "I think Vanessa's trying to get close because she feels bad." "She feels something," I said quietly, setting my teacup down. "But remorse isn't it," he frowned. "You always think the worst." "I always prepare for the worst," I corrected him. "That's why I'm never blindsided." A few days later, I received an email, not from Vanessa, but from the restaurant's event manager. Subject: Inquiry regarding property lease renewal. Body: Dear Mrs. Turner, I received a visit from your daughter-in-law, Mrs. Vanessa Turner, earlier today. She expressed interest in taking over your management role for the venue's future events. I wanted to confirm this with you before proceeding. I reread that line twice. Taking over my management role. The nerve of her. I exhaled slowly, almost laughing. There it was, the wounded pride resurfacing, dressed now in professionalism. I picked up the phone and called the manager immediately. "Please thank Mrs. Turner for her enthusiasm," I said evenly. "But remind her that enthusiasm isn't ownership. The property remains under my control until further notice," he chuckled awkwardly. "Of course, ma'am. I thought it was strange she didn't mention your permission." "Yes," I said. "She tends to forget permission isn't optional. I didn't call Vanessa right away." I waited. And sure enough, the next day, she showed up unannounced. She was wearing her usual expensive smile, the one she used in photo shoots. "Margaret," she sang, stepping inside as though we'd always been best friends. "I just wanted to drop by and bring you these." She held out a bouquet of roses, loud red, like her lipstick. "How thoughtful," I said, taking them but not moving aside. "I've been thinking," she continued, setting her designer purse on my couch, "you own such an amazing property downtown. And I've built all these connections through my social media and event network. If we partnered, imagine how much we could expand the place's reputation." There it was, her pitch. I listened, not interrupting, not frowning, just letting her talk herself into her own hole. She went on for almost 10 minutes, explaining how she could modernize the image, draw a younger crowd, and boost profits. When she finally paused to breathe, I spoke. "You're ambitious," I said quietly. She smiled brightly. "Exactly. I knew you'd understand. But ambition without respect," I added, "is just hunger in heels." Her smile faltered slightly. "Excuse me?" I gestured toward the roses on the counter. "You can decorate greed, Vanessa. Dress it up with charm, call it opportunity, but underneath it's still greed." Her face stiffened. "I'm just trying to help you. You're getting older. You don't need to deal with contracts and paperwork." I smiled, a small, knowing smile. "I've been reading contracts since before you were born, dear. Paperwork doesn't scare me. People do." She stood there, her expression twisting between embarrassment and fury. "You think I'm just after your money?" she asked sharply. "I think you're after control," I said evenly. "The same control you tried to show when you mocked me at your party." Her eyes flashed. "Oh, come on. You're still on about that?" "Not at all," I said. "I moved on the moment you said it. You're the one still trying to fix the power balance." She opened her mouth to respond, but I gently raised a hand. Vanessa, I forgive you. I truly do. But forgiveness doesn't come with partnership papers. The restaurant is not a brand for you to polish. It's a legacy for me to protect. Her jaw clenched. Legacy? You don't even use it. It's just sitting there making rent? Exactly, I said softly. And peace of mind pays better than profit. She stormed out minutes later, her heels clicking like gunfire on the hardwood. I stood by the window as her car pulled out of the driveway, the roses she'd brought still sitting on the counter. They looked pretty under the light, pretty but sharp, like her. I left them there until morning, then threw them out with the trash. 2 weeks passed quietly. The air felt cleaner without her calls. Then one evening, Daniel came by again. His voice had that familiar guilt in it. Mom, he said carefully, Vanessa might have tried something she shouldn't have. I set my knitting aside. Go on. She reached out to the restaurant's parent company, he admitted, and pitched herself as a future manager, said she was married to the owner's son. They contacted me to verify. I sighed slowly, closing my eyes for a moment. She really doesn't know when to stop, I murmured. He rubbed his temples. I'll talk to her, I promise. She's just desperate, I finished for him. Pride and desperation often hold hands. That night, I drafted a letter. Not angry, not cruel, just precise. To Mrs. Vanessa Turner. Vanessa, while I appreciate your interest in business, please remember that ownership is not an open invitation for interference. This property represents decades of work and sacrifice. If you wish to be involved, it begins with respect, not assumption. Consider this a gentle reminder before legal boundaries are drawn. Sincerely, Margaret Turner. I sent it by registered mail. I wanted her to sign for it, to physically hold that boundary in her hands. When she received it, the silence lasted longer this time, 3 full weeks. Then came the family dinner. Daniel invited me. It's just a small get-together, he said. Let's keep things peaceful, I agreed. Peace was always my preference, though I'd learned that sometimes peace looks like silence others mistake for weakness. The dinner was at their house, gleaming marble counters, crystal vases, expensive art that never felt like home. Vanessa greeted me at the door with a cautious smile. Margaret, you look nice. Thank you, I said, stepping inside. We sat around the table, the air full of unspoken tension. Daniel tried to talk about work. Their son chattered about school, but underneath it all, you could feel the discomfort, like a thread pulled too tight. Halfway through dessert, Vanessa spoke. I've been thinking, she said slowly, maybe it's time we start over. You know, as a family? That's a lovely idea, I said, folding my napkin. Starting over is good. It's healthy. She relaxed a little, smiling faintly. Exactly. Maybe we could host your birthday next month, somewhere nice. My treat. I looked at her over my glasses, amused. You're offering to host a party for me? At a restaurant I own? Her smile froze again. Oh, I didn't mean, I laughed softly, shaking my head. Don't worry, Vanessa. I won't be needing another dinner in my name. But thank you, she blushed, fumbling with her fork. Later, as I left their house, Daniel walked me to my car. She's trying, Mom, he said quietly. She really is. I know, I said. But sometimes people try for the wrong reasons, and until she learns the right ones, she'll keep tripping over her own pride. He nodded, unsure. As I drove home, the city lights reflected off the windshield, small, glittering truths scattered across darkness. Vanessa thought control made her powerful. But real power is quieter than that. It's the ability to stay kind when others expect you to break. Still, I had the faintest feeling she wasn't done yet. Because some people don't know how to accept defeat. They only know how to disguise it. And I had just seen the flicker of something new in her eyes that night. Something plotting. I always believed there's a certain peace in distance. The kind that comes when you let time expose the truth instead of your temper. For weeks, I tried to keep that peace. I stayed quiet. I tended my garden. I even sent Daniel a few cheerful texts just to remind him that family could still exist outside of pride. But peace doesn't last long around people who live for applause. And Vanessa was the kind of woman who couldn't stand silence, especially if it meant people might forget her name. It started when a small article popped up on the local community, a website, Chicago Hearts Charity Gala, organized by the Turner family. Below the headline was a picture of Vanessa in a satin gown, holding a champagne glass, smiling like royalty. The article described the upcoming event, an exclusive charity dinner hosted by local philanthropist and venue owner Vanessa Turner. Owner, there it was. That one word, owner, I felt something stir inside me. Not anger, not yet. Just disappointment that sat in the chest like heavy air. She'd done it again. Only this time she hadn't just insulted me in front of guests. She was using my name, my property, to build her own image. 2 days later, I received a formal invitation in the mail. Thick white cardstock, gold trim, embossed letters. You are cordially invited to the Chicago Hearts Charity Gala, hosted by Vanessa and Daniel Turner Venue, the Turner Estate, Downtown Event Hall, the Turner Estate. My lips pressed into a thin smile. That was bold, even for her. The address printed below, my restaurant, my building, my name on the deed. That evening, I called the restaurant manager, Mr. Collins. "Have you rented out the venue for a charity gala?" I asked. "Yes, ma'am," he said cautiously. "Mrs. Turner booked it under your family name. She mentioned you'd given approval." "I didn't," I replied calmly. "But let her continue." "Don't cancel anything," he hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Oh, yes," I said softly. "I'll be attending." For the next few days, I prepared quietly. I had no intention of yelling or making a scene. I'd learned long ago that dignity is the loudest kind of revenge. I went to my closet and pulled out a dress I hadn't worn in years. Dark emerald green, simple, elegant, with a matching silk shawl. I pinned my gray hair into a soft bun, leaving a few loose strands near my temples. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who had survived far worse than mockery. I saw composure carved from experience. The night of the gala arrived with all the usual chaos of vanity. Photographers flashing cameras outside, black cars lining the curb, laughter spilling into the cool spring air. I arrived alone, stepping out of a taxi. The doorman, a young man in a fitted suit, smiled warmly as he held the door. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to the Turner Estate Gala." I couldn't help but chuckle under my breath as I walked in. Inside, the restaurant looked unrecognizable. Crystal chandeliers glowed over silk-covered tables, each centerpiece a mountain of white roses. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Waiters floated by carrying trays of champagne, and in the center of it all stood Vanessa, radiant in a glittering gold gown, her hair swept into perfect waves, her laugh ringing above the crowd. She was holding court, surrounded by donors and society women, every word dripping with practiced charm. When she saw me, her smile faltered for half a second, but she recovered quickly. "Margaret," she said brightly, crossing the room with arms outstretched. "You came! I wasn't sure you'd make it." "I wouldn't miss it," I said, my tone soft but steady. "It's not every day someone hosts a gala in my building." Her eyes widened just slightly. Then she laughed, too loudly. "Oh, you're too funny. Everyone, this is my mother-in-law. Isn't she adorable?" The group chuckled politely. Adorable. The word burned a little, but I let it pass. I took a glass of champagne from a nearby waiter and sipped slowly, surveying the room. Nearly 200 guests, reporters, city council members. Even the mayor's wife was here. Perfect. I wandered through the tables as the evening went on, chatting with the restaurant staff. Many of them smiled knowingly. They'd all been briefed. Mr. Collins, the manager, gave me a small nod from across the room. Everything was in place. After dinner, Vanessa took the stage. A spotlight hit her, and she glowed like a woman made of confidence and deceit. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice smooth and practiced, "thank you all for coming tonight. The Turner Estate has always been about community, love, and generosity. I'm honored to host this evening in our family's beautiful venue. Applause, cameras, flashing lights. Our mission tonight," she continued, "is to raise funds for children's hospitals across the Midwest. So please eat, drink, and donate freely. Let's make a difference together." Another round of applause. I waited until she stepped down from the podium and began circulating again, shaking hands, accepting compliments. Then, as planned, Mr. Collins approached her discreetly. "Mrs. Turner," he said politely, "the property owner has arrived." "She'd like to say a few words." Vanessa blinked. I already did my speech." He smiled professionally. "Of course. But Mrs. Turner, the owner, has requested it." Confusion flickered in her eyes. Then something darker. Fear. Moments later, he handed me the microphone. The music faded. The chatter quieted. I walked to the center of the stage, calm and poised, my heels clicking softly on the marble floor. Hundreds of eyes turned toward me. "Good evening," I began, my voice steady and clear. "I want to thank you all for being here tonight, for such a meaningful cause. This restaurant has hosted many wonderful events over the years, but this one feels particularly special." A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Vanessa stood near the edge of the room, frozen. "I'm Margaret Turner," I continued. "And though my name isn't printed anywhere on tonight's program, it should be." A hush fell over the audience. "Because this building," I said, "wasn't borrowed or rented or sponsored. It belongs to me." There was a collective gasp. I smiled gently. "For years I've kept quiet about it. Ownership was never about pride. It was about peace. But tonight I realized peace is easily mistaken for permission, and I can't allow my name or this property to be used under false pretenses." The silence deepened. You could almost hear the sound of champagne bubbles popping somewhere in the background. I turned slightly, meeting Vanessa's gaze. "I appreciate my daughter-in-law's enthusiasm for charity," I said warmly, "but next time, I'd prefer she ask before presenting my business as hers." A few uncomfortable laughs spread through the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" Vanessa's face had gone pale. She stepped forward quickly. "Margaret, wait, this is a misunderstanding. I was just trying to honor the family name." "The family name is fine," I said, my voice still calm. "But honesty builds reputation faster than glamour ever will." The audience was caught between fascination and pity. Some tried to look away, others couldn't. "I'd also like to make a small donation," I continued. "Since this gala has such noble intentions, I'll be covering the entire evening's venue costs personally, under my name. So every dollar you donate will go directly to the cause." Applause erupted. Real applause. The moment swallowed Vanessa whole. You could see it in her eyes, that tremor of realization, that painful understanding that the power she'd borrowed had just been reclaimed in front of everyone. When I stepped down, the mayor's wife shook my hand. "That was graceful," she whispered. "Age teaches you restraint," I said quietly. Vanessa was standing by the dessert table, her perfect smile trembling. "You humiliated me," she hissed under her breath as I passed. "No," I said gently. "You did that to yourself. I just told the truth." After the gala, word spread faster than I expected. The charity event had raised an impressive amount, but all the headlines mentioned one detail: elderly businesswoman reveals ownership. During charity gala, a lesson in grace and integrity. Vanessa didn't appear in any photos the next day. The organizers had quietly edited her out. Daniel came by later, clearly torn. "Mom, that was something," he said. "It was necessary," I told him simply. He hesitated. "She's devastated. She'll recover," I said softly. "Embarrassment fades faster than arrogance if you let it." He sighed, then nodded. "You didn't even raise your voice," I smiled faintly. "People hear you louder when you don't have to." Days passed. Vanessa didn't call. She didn't text. The house stayed quiet on their side of town. Then, a week later, a small envelope arrived at my door. No return address. Inside was a simple note in her handwriting. "I understand now. You were never the obstacle. You were the mirror." I stared at it for a long time. For the first time, her words felt honest. That evening, I sat by my window as the city lights flickered across the skyline. I poured myself a small glass of wine and thought about how strange revenge can feel when it isn't cruel, when it's just truth spoken at the right time. Sometimes silence is strength. But other times, strength is the voice that chooses when to break it. I hadn't shouted or cursed or even sought payback. I had simply reminded everyone, and her, that power doesn't belong to the loudest in the room. It belongs to the one who doesn't need to shout to be believed. And as I sipped my wine, The faintest smile touched my lips, because somewhere out there, Vanessa was learning the one lesson she'd tried so hard to avoid. Respect isn't inherited, it's earned. People think humiliation ends when the lights go out and the guests go home. But it doesn't. It lingers. Not in the air, but in the eyes that saw it happen. For Vanessa, that gala was supposed to be her grand arrival, her entry into the city's social elite. Instead, it became the night her name turned into a punchline whispered over wine glasses. For me, it was just a Thursday well spent. The week after the gala, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Reporters, socialites, business owners, everyone wanted to hear my story. Mrs. Turner, one journalist from the Chicago Tribune, said, "Your speech was iconic. The internet is calling it the classiest takedown in history. Can we interview you?" I almost laughed. Dear, I didn't take anyone down. I just stood up. Still, I agreed. Not because I wanted attention, but because I wanted truth to spread quietly, the way good tea seeps into water. When the article came out 3 days later, the headline read, "Margaret Turner, the hidden woman behind Chicago's brightest venues." Beneath it was a photo of me sitting at my favorite cafe window, sunlight glinting off my teacup, my expression calm and certain. The journalist had written about how I'd built the restaurant with my late husband, how I'd kept my name off the signage to let younger family members shine. It was flattering, though I hadn't asked for it. But the part that changed everything, the part Vanessa could never undo, came at the end. While some build their legacy on borrowed glamour, others let integrity speak for itself. And in Margaret Turner's case, the truth was worth far more than gold. That line spread like wildfire, Daniel called that evening. His voice was softer than usual. "Mom, the article? Everyone's talking about it." "I know," I said. "She hasn't left the house all day," he added. The charity board dropped her. Her social club, too. Sponsors are backing out of her fashion event next month. I didn't respond. "I don't know what to say," he continued. "Part of me feels sorry for her, but—" "Daniel," I interrupted gently, "don't feel sorry for someone who thought kindness was weakness. She built her throne on lies. It was bound to collapse." He exhaled. "You're right. I usually am," I said with a faint smile. 2 days later, Vanessa showed up at my restaurant, alone, no makeup, no camera smile, just a trembling woman in designer clothes that suddenly looked too heavy for her. It was late afternoon. The place was quiet except for the low hum of soft jazz. I was sitting at a corner table with a cup of tea and a folder of documents. She stood in front of me for a moment, hesitant. "Margaret, can we talk?" I looked up calmly. "We're already talking." She swallowed hard. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. The gala, I just wanted to make something of myself. Everyone expects me to be perfect, and you thought stealing my identity was the way?" I said evenly, her eyes welled. "I didn't steal. I just borrowed your credibility. I wanted people to take me seriously." "Vanessa," I said, folding the papers neatly, "you called me an ugly hog at your birthday. Do you remember that?" She froze. Her mascara-smudged lashes fluttered. "I remember," she whispered. "You said it because you thought I was nothing. Because in your mind, youth and beauty made you valuable. But let me tell you something." I leaned forward slightly. "Pretty fades fast. Integrity doesn't." Her lips trembled. "I know." "No," I said. "You don't. Because if you did, you wouldn't have come here trying to fix your image. You'd have come here to fix your conscience." Silence. She looked around, eyes darting toward the windows. Outside, a few reporters were still snapping photos through the glass, hungry for another story. That was when I realized what she really wanted. Not forgiveness, but damage control. "Do you want to apologize, Vanessa?" I asked softly. "Or do you just want to be seen apologizing?" She didn't answer. Her silence was answer enough. I stood up slowly and gathered my things. "This restaurant has a board meeting in an hour." "You should probably go," she panicked. "Margaret, please. People are saying awful things about me." "That I lied? That I used your name for money? Did you?" She faltered. "Yes." "Then they're not saying awful things," I said. "They're saying accurate things." She reached for my arm, but I stepped back gently. "You can't treat people like decorations and expect them to save you when the party ends," I said. "And this one's over. Then I walked away. No anger, no triumph. Just quiet finality. Behind me, I heard her start to cry. It wasn't loud or dramatic, just a small, broken sound that filled the empty restaurant like the last note of a song that had already ended. By the next week, Vanessa's world was crumbling. The women she used to gossip with at the club stopped returning her calls. Her social media accounts went dark after sponsors pulled their partnerships. Even Daniel, loyal as he was, had begun to see her for who she truly was. He came to visit one morning, sitting across from me in the kitchen. His shoulders slumped, eyes tired. "She's been staying with her mother," he said quietly. "Refuses to leave the house." "Good," I said, sipping my coffee. "Maybe silence will teach her something." "She's different," he admitted. "Scared, maybe. Keeps saying she's ruined everything." "She's not ruined," I said. "She's just seeing herself clearly for the first time." He nodded slowly, rubbing his temples. "Mom, how do you stay so calm through all this?" "Because I stopped fighting people who live off chaos," I said simply. "I just let their noise die in the quiet they created." Later that afternoon, I received an email from a journalist with a national morning show. "Mrs. Turner, we'd love to feature you in our Women of Influence segment next month. Your story has inspired thousands, seniors standing up for themselves, redefining age and power. Would you consider it?" I smiled at the screen. The irony wasn't lost on me. Vanessa had wanted to be admired by the world, and in trying to claim my worth, she'd handed it to me instead. I accepted the invitation. The morning of the interview, I wore a navy blue pantsuit and small pearl earrings. My gray hair was styled loosely around my shoulders, and my smile was calm, genuine. They asked about my past, how I built the restaurant, how I managed it quietly all these years. I told them the truth. Then they asked about the gala incident. "Was that revenge?" the host asked. I paused for a moment. "No," I said finally. "Revenge is loud. That was self-respect, and self-respect is quiet." The studio fell silent for a moment. Then, applause. When the episode aired, it went viral overnight. Margaret Turner trended across social platforms. People wrote comments like, "This woman just redefined class." Imagine being insulted and still teaching elegance in return. Proof that grace is the loudest revenge. I didn't reply to any of them. I didn't need to. The same week, Daniel showed up again, this time with divorce papers. "She asked me to bring them," he said quietly, placing the envelope on the table. "She wants a clean break." I looked up at him. "Are you sure this is what you want?" He sighed. "Mom, I spent years defending her. I kept thinking she'd change. But she only respected power, never people. You taught me better than that." My chest tightened, but not from sadness, from pride. "You're your father's son," I said softly. He nodded. "I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." After he left, I opened the envelope and looked at Vanessa's signature. It was shaky, hesitant, the handwriting of someone finally realizing they'd lost control. For a brief moment, I felt something almost like pity. Almost. Then I folded the papers and set them aside. Months passed. The restaurant thrived. I expanded to a second location, this one overlooking Lake Michigan. I hired young chefs, trained them myself, told them stories about loyalty and grace. Sometimes when I'd walk through the dining room, I'd hear customers whispering, not gossip, but admiration. "That's her, Margaret Turner, the woman who owned everything with silence." And I'd just smile, because yes, I had. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the lake, I sat by the window in my new restaurant office. The light painted everything gold, the tables, the wine glasses, even the framed newspaper article on my wall. I thought about Vanessa again. Last I'd heard, she'd moved to a smaller apartment outside the city. Her social circle had vanished. She was reportedly trying to start an online boutique, quietly, anonymously. Funny how life humbles us when we refuse to do it ourselves. The sound of my phone buzzing pulled me from my thoughts. It was a message from Daniel. "Dinner soon? Just you and me." "My treat this time," I smiled. Looking forward to it, I replied, "And bring something homemade, not store-bought." He sent a laughing emoji back. As the sun sank behind the skyline, I took one last look at the city that had watched everything unfold. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't bitter, but I wasn't forgiving either. Forgiveness is for those who regret what they've done. And Vanessa, she regretted being caught, not being cruel, so I let her live with her truth. That was punishment enough, because someday, when she walks past my restaurant, the one whose name she once tried to claim, she'll see the sign glowing in the window. Turner House, established by Margaret Turner, 1987, and she'll remember that night, that stage, that moment when the applause wasn't hers. Some betrayals don't deserve anger, they deserve awareness. And sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't destroying someone, it's letting them see you rise higher without them. So tell me, have you ever been underestimated only to watch your truth outshine their lies?